AITA for refusing to spend another dime on stepkids and grands. For some background, I am 38 years old, and I have been married to my husband, who is 50, for 10 years. We have a beautiful 1-year-old daughter together. He also has 2 children from his previous marriage, a son who is 30 and a daughter who is 28. When we first got together, I made every effort to be part of their lives. I always knew that having stepchildren, especially ones who were already grown, would not be easy, but I wanted to be involved in whatever way I could. One thing about me is that my love language has always been gift-giving. It is just how I express love, and it brings me genuine joy to make others feel special. Every year, I made sure to buy my stepchildren gifts for their birthdays, Christmas, and other holidays. I even went as far as to include little things for Valentine's Day, Easter, or just because. I never expected anything in return, I just wanted them to feel loved and included, even if I was never going to be their real parent. I knew my role, and I never tried to overstep. My husband would usually get them gift cards, but I was the one who put thought into actual presents. Over the years, I started to notice little comments here and there. My stepdaughter, in particular, would say things like, "You are always so extra," or, "You take this holiday stuff too seriously," with an eye roll. It stung a little, but I shrugged it off. I figured that maybe they just were not sentimental people, and that was fine. But despite their lack of enthusiasm, I kept at it because that was just who I was. Now, both of them have children of their own. My stepson has 3 kids, all under the age of 5, and my stepdaughter has twin 2-year-old daughters. Naturally, I extended my gift-giving to their children as well. Every birthday, every Christmas, every little milestone, I was there with a present in hand. I wanted them to feel the warmth and joy that comes with receiving something from family. It never crossed my mind that this would not be reciprocated. Fast forward to this past Christmas. My stepdaughter and her husband were hosting the family gathering. It was a nice setup, dinner, drinks, a cozy atmosphere, and of course, the big family gift exchange. Each household was supposed to exchange gifts with the others. Now, for clarity, my stepchildren have never bought me anything for Christmas. Not once in the entire decade I have been with their father. And honestly, I had made peace with that a long time ago. I never gave to receive. But this year, something happened that I just could not ignore. As the gifts were being passed out, I noticed a pattern. My husband received his usual gift card from them, his son and his wife received gifts, his daughter and her husband received gifts, all the grandkids received gifts, and of course, I had come prepared with my usual stack of presents for all of them. But as I sat there, watching each person open their gifts, I realized that not a single one of them had gotten anything for me. Again, not shocking, but what happened next was the real slap in the face. They had also chosen to completely ignore my 1-year-old daughter. Their own half-sister. There she was, sitting on my lap, looking around with those big innocent eyes, watching everyone around her unwrap presents, and there was nothing for her. Not even a small token gift. Not a stuffed animal, not a book, not a single thing to acknowledge her existence in that room. I felt my heart sink. This was not about me anymore. This was about her. A child. Their blood. Their sibling. And they had gone out of their way to make sure she was left out. I tried to keep my composure, but my stomach twisted in knots as I realized what was happening. This was not an accident. This was intentional. They had made a collective decision that my daughter did not matter to them. I looked over at my husband, who seemed completely oblivious to what was going on. Or maybe he noticed and just chose not to make a scene. Either way, I was done. I picked up my daughter, gathered my things, and without a word, I walked out of that house. When we got home, I let my husband have it. I told him that I had spent the last decade trying to be a part of his family, trying to be kind, trying to make sure everyone felt thought of, and this was how they repaid me. It was one thing for them to ignore me, but to exclude their own half-sister was beyond cruel. I told him I would never again spend a single dime on his children or his grandchildren. They were not my family. And I meant it. And if that was not enough, I later found out that his children had done a family photo shoot with all the grandkids, but left my daughter out of it. That was the final nail in the coffin. It was no longer just about holiday gifts. This was a clear message. They did not see her as family. They did not see me as family. And after everything I had done for them, they could not even muster up the bare minimum effort to include my child. So no, I do not regret leaving that night. I do not regret cutting off the gift giving. And I do not regret finally seeing them for who they truly are. But I do wonder, was I wrong? Should I have just swallowed my pride and stayed quiet? Or was I right to finally put my foot down? Update 1. After everything that happened on Christmas, I had a long talk with my husband. I needed to know exactly where he stood in all of this. Not just as my husband, but as the father of the daughter we share. I laid everything out, the years of effort I had put into his family, the way I had been treated in return, and, most importantly, the blatant exclusion of our child. I wanted to hear what he had to say. I wanted to see if there was any part of him that understood how deeply this hurt me. His response. His children didn't have an issue with our age difference, they just didn't see me as family. And more than that, they didn't consider our daughter their sister. That was it. That was the moment something inside me shifted. I could have screamed. I could have cried. I could have fought for some sort of validation, but what would be the point? They were entitled to their opinions and their feelings, just as I was entitled to mine. And mine were clear, if they didn't consider me family, then they were no longer part of mine. So, I decided right then and there that I was done. Done trying. Done making an effort. Done pretending that I had some kind of obligation to people who had made it clear that they felt none toward me or my daughter. I was no longer their stepmother. I was simply their father's wife. Nothing more, nothing less. And as for my daughter, she was mine. Just mine. Valentine's Day came and went, and for the first time in 10 years, I didn't spend a single dime on his children or grandchildren. No cute little cards, no small thoughtful gifts, no carefully wrapped packages with their names on them. Nothing. Instead, I did something I should have done a long time ago, I splurged on my daughter. I bought her a beautiful little dress, new toys, her favorite snacks. I celebrated her, and only her. And you know what? It felt incredible. A week before Valentine's Day, I casually mentioned to my husband that the holiday was coming up and that his grandchildren would probably be expecting something. He barely acknowledged it. He did nothing. He didn't buy gifts for his children, his grandchildren, or even for our daughter. And, unsurprisingly, he didn't get anything for me either. It didn't even surprise me at this point. But what did surprise me was that, after the holiday passed, he had the nerve to make a comment about how he was feeling some type of way about the growing separation between me and his family, as if it had been my decision. That was when I laid it all out for him. I reminded him that I was simply respecting the boundaries that his family had set. They didn't want me as part of their family. Fine. Then I wasn't. I told him that his children and his grandchildren belonged to him, and to him alone. They were nothing to me. And if he had a problem with that, he needed to take it up with them, not with me. His silence said everything. And in that silence, I knew. This marriage wouldn't last. Not because of this situation alone, but because of what it represented. There was something I had failed to mention before. Something that, looking back, should have been a red flag from the start. Between his first marriage and ours, my husband had been married to another woman. According to him, she had treated his children horribly. He had painted her as some kind of villain, someone who had been cruel and unkind to them. And at the time, I had believed him. Why wouldn't I? I didn't know her, had never met her, and only had his word to go off of. But now, after everything, I started to wonder. Was the story really as one-sided as he made it seem? Was she truly the monster he described, or had she, too, simply stopped tolerating his children's behavior? Had she, like me, tried to be a part of the family only to realize that she was never actually welcome? Had she also reached a breaking point where she decided that she was done? I would never know the full truth, but what I did know was that he seemed to think his children's attitude toward me stemmed from past traumas with his second wife. That they treated me this way because of something that happened before I was ever even in the picture. And that, to me, was bullshit. They were grown adults. They had families of their own. They had the capacity to treat people with kindness and respect if they chose to. And yet, they had never once made the effort. They had never once tried to get to know me outside of the role they had boxed me into. They had made their choice. And now, I was making mine. From this moment forward, I would no longer be a doormat. I would no longer be the one giving and giving while receiving nothing in return. I would no longer pretend that we were some kind of blended family when, in reality, I was nothing more than an outsider. I would put my energy where it mattered, into myself and my daughter. And my husband? Well, he could either accept that, or he could finally admit to himself that our marriage was already crumbling. Because at the end of the day, this wasn't just about his children or his grandchildren. This was about him. His inaction. His unwillingness to stand up for me or our daughter. His inability to see what was right in front of him. Update 2. After Valentine's Day, I settled into my new mindset. No more reaching out, no more trying to bridge a gap that clearly wasn't meant to be crossed. My focus was on my daughter and my own well-being. I stopped checking in on my stepchildren, stopped making the effort that had never been appreciated in the first place. It was surprisingly easy once I let go of the obligation I had forced upon myself. There was no anger left, just clarity. They had made their choice, and now I was making mine. My husband, as expected, continued to do nothing. If he was uncomfortable with the distance growing between us, he never made any real effort to fix it. He carried on as if nothing had changed, as if our marriage wasn't cracking beneath the weight of his indifference. It was almost impressive how seamlessly he ignored the tension in the house, as though he had perfected the art of passive existence. Then, out of nowhere, something unexpected happened. I got a message, an Instagram DM from my husband's ex-wife. Not the mother of his children, but the woman he had married after her. The one he had painted as cruel and vindictive. The one he claimed had made his children's lives miserable. At first, I hesitated to open it. What could she possibly have to say to me? But curiosity got the best of me, and I clicked. Just wanted to say, I see what's happening. And I'm sorry. I've been there. That was all she wrote, but it was enough to send my mind spinning. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. I wasn't sure what her intentions were, and I wasn't sure I wanted to engage. But something about the way she phrased it, I see what's happening, made my stomach twist. She wasn't guessing. She wasn't fishing for information. She already knew. I responded cautiously, and before I knew it, we were exchanging long messages about our eerily similar experiences. She told me how, when she had been married to my husband, she had gone above and beyond for his children. She had tried to be a parental figure, tried to support them, tried to make them feel loved, and yet no matter what she did, it was met with cold indifference. She had made their birthdays special, made sure Christmas felt magical, planned family outings, and in the end, none of it mattered. They had never accepted her. Worse, they had made it clear that they never wanted to. She told me about the years of subtle digs, the passive-aggressive comments, the way they would openly dismiss her efforts and make her feel like she was intruding in her own home. And the worst part? My husband had never stepped in. He had watched it all unfold, shrugged, and let it happen. She had spent years convincing herself that if she just tried harder, if she just loved them more, they would come around. They never did. She told me how, when she finally stopped trying, she was blamed for the rift that had already existed long before she ever came into the picture. She was accused of being distant, of being cold, of not being family-oriented enough. And then, when she had had enough and walked away, they made sure to rewrite the narrative. She became the villain. The evil stepmother. The one who never cared. I felt sick reading her words. Every sentence felt like looking into a mirror. Then she dropped something I wasn't expecting. He told you I treated them horribly, didn't he? That I was the reason they wanted nothing to do with me. I sat there, phone in my hands, unsure of how to respond. Because yes, that was exactly what he had told me. That she had been cruel to his children, that she had caused them pain, that her mistreatment of them had been the reason they never accepted her. I had believed him. I had never questioned it. I told her as much. And she responded almost immediately. It was never me. It was them. And he let it happen. That sentence hit me like a freight train. It wasn't just about his children. It was about him. He had let this same cycle play out before, just like he was letting it play out now. He had chosen passivity over action, silence over accountability. He had watched as I tried and tried and tried, all while knowing exactly how this would end. Because it had happened before. He had seen it happen before. And yet, he had never once warned me. Never once stepped in to prevent it. How could he let me go through this knowing it would break me the same way it had broken her? How could he let me give everything to his children, knowing they would never give anything back? How could he let them ignore our daughter, knowing that they had already proven themselves capable of this level of cruelty? And then the real question crept into my mind. How many other things had he rewritten? How many other stories had he framed in a way that made him look innocent while everyone else looked like the problem? How much of what I believed about his past was the truth, and how much of it was just the version that made him the victim? I felt a deep sense of unease settle over me. He hadn't lied outright, but he had conveniently left out his role in all of this. He had painted himself as a man who had simply been unlucky in love, who had married a woman that mistreated his children and drove a wedge between them. But now, I was seeing the full picture. He had allowed that wedge to form. He had watched it grow. And then, when it became too big to ignore, he had let the blame fall on someone else's shoulders. And now, history was repeating itself. The difference was, I wasn't going to let it play out the same way. For the first time in my marriage, I started seriously considering what my life would look like without my husband. Update 3. After my conversation with his ex-wife, I knew I needed clarity. I had spent too long making excuses, hoping for change, convincing myself that things would somehow get better if I just put in enough effort. Every ignored attempt, every quiet dismissal, every moment of being treated like an outsider had accumulated over the years, but I had always found a way to justify it. They needed more time. They had been through a lot. They weren't used to me yet. I had built my entire approach to this family on the belief that one day, things would shift. That all the love and patience I had poured into them would eventually be recognized. That I would finally be seen as more than just their father's wife. But now, the pattern was undeniable. His children had done this before. They had taken another woman who tried, who gave, who loved them despite their coldness, and they had tossed her aside. They had let her carry the weight of a broken family on her back, only to blame her when she inevitably collapsed under it. And he had let it happen. He had stood there and watched, just like he had been watching me. The realization settled in my bones like a final, irreversible truth. I sat my husband down and told him exactly what I had learned. I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't try to make it sound less damning than it was. I laid it all out, the cycle his children kept repeating, his refusal to intervene, the fact that he had knowingly allowed history to repeat itself while I unknowingly played my part. I expected some kind of reaction, some flicker of realization in his eyes, some acknowledgement that this was bigger than just me feeling unappreciated. I wanted him to see it for what it was, his children's ingrained pattern of rejection, his own failure to stand up for the women in his life, the deep, undeniable truth that he had let me suffer through something he knew would end in heartbreak. Instead, he just nodded. A simple, passive acknowledgement, as if I had told him there was a chance of rain later in the afternoon. No shock. No denial. No attempt to explain himself. Just a nod. That told me everything I needed to know. I made my decision. Within a month, I had met with a lawyer, secured a place to stay, and prepared for the inevitable. There was no hesitation, no lingering second thoughts. I had given this marriage 10 years of my life. 10 years of bending over backward to prove my worth to people who were never going to see me as anything more than a temporary fixture in their father's life. 10 years of swallowing my pride, putting my own needs aside, making myself small so that they might feel more comfortable. 10 years of giving my love freely to people who didn't even see my daughter as their blood. 10 years of thinking if I just love them enough, they will love me back. There was nothing left to salvage. When I told my husband I was leaving, he barely reacted. He just sighed, a slow, resigned breath, and said he figured this was coming. That was it. No fight. No remorse. No attempt to make things right. He didn't ask what he could do to fix it, didn't say he wanted me to stay, didn't even seem particularly upset. It was as if I had simply confirmed something he had already accepted long before I did. And in that moment, I knew. This was never a marriage built on love. I had never truly been his partner. I had been a placeholder. Someone to fill the space in his life while he drifted along, passive as ever, letting things happen around him instead of making any real choices. He didn't choose me. He didn't fight for me. He just existed beside me, the way he had existed beside his ex-wife, the way he had existed beside his children as they hurt the people who tried to love them. The day I left, I felt more relief than sadness. There was no dramatic goodbye, no long-winded farewell. I packed up my daughter's things, gathered what I needed, walked out the door, and never looked back. What happened next was the real shocker. Less than 2 weeks later, I got a message. It was from my husband's daughter. The same daughter who had made it abundantly clear that she didn't consider me family, the same one who had happily excluded my child from Christmas, the same one who had never once shown me an ounce of warmth. At first, I assumed she was reaching out to acknowledge what had happened, to take some kind of responsibility, to express regret or even just recognition of how things had unfolded. That wasn't it at all. She wanted to know if I still planned on sending gifts to her kids for their birthdays. I laughed out loud when I read the message. It was so absurd, so completely detached from reality, that it almost didn't seem real. Even after everything, she still thought I would be playing the role of the doting step-grandmother. She still expected the benefits of my kindness without ever having given me the bare minimum of respect in return. She genuinely believed that I would continue to give, even after being pushed out of their family like I had never mattered in the first place. It was almost impressive, in a way. The entitlement. The audacity. The sheer lack of self-awareness. My response was short and to the point. I told her she didn't understand. We weren't family. She had made sure of that. That was the last time I ever heard from her. As for my ex-husband, I heard through mutual acquaintances that he had started seeing someone new within a few months. The news didn't surprise me. He had always needed someone to fill the empty spaces in his life, someone to take on the emotional labor he refused to carry himself. And all I could think was, does she know what she's walking into? Does she know the cycle she's about to step into? Does she know that she'll spend years trying, only to be dismissed just like I was? But none of that was my problem anymore. Now, it's just me and my daughter. And for the first time in a long time, I feel free.